Hey everybody, Adam O'Leary, Encite, Branding, Marketing, Creative. Nika Yushkovich, our social media, digital
marketing strategist.
Yes. Here with another episode of Encite Live, coming to you from, again, the Denver Athletic Club. So we're here in downtown Denver in a nice little spot that we got here.
Yep.
Things going well?
Yeah, pretty good. How are you doing?
Doing good. No complaints. 2023 is kind of in full swing, and we're kind of rocking and rolling, and we're excited to be back regularly.
Yep.
One thing I want to talk about today, article about Barnes & Noble, right? The super ubiquitous bookstore. Maybe that's a word. It is. Well, it is a word. But,
it's a word.
But there's got a lot of changes for them in 2023. They are going to open 30 new stores.
Which is pretty big since
which is
they've been
crazy.
Selling, or I guess closing a ton of stores previously.
Yep. So they had some new leadership come in. There's been some transitions, but they're talking about moving away from that corporate bad corporate organization.
Corporate giant.
Yeah, corporate giant, right?
Taking over everybody.
Yeah. So they're trying to move away from that and really give each individual store some leeway in kind of how the store is run, which makes me as a marketer and as a branding guy, like start to get worried.
A little nervous.
But what they're doing is that they're doing that, giving a little more autonomy for the management in each one of those locations to do different things. So again, as a branding and a corporate identity and brand strategy standpoint, that would make me super nervous. But I think what they're also trying to do is they're trying to move away from this perception as that corporate giant to more of a local coffee shop bookstore. And the way that they're doing that is they're getting rid of all of these extra products, right? Like I think in the article they talked about were books and not batteries. Like so they always had these like impulse buys,
just a little tech here and there. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
And then they're moving back there. So they're doing that and getting rid of all these kind of additional products, which I always thought it was like very cluttered, and it was just like, why does a bookstore have like a drone? Right? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, they have like toys and stuff. Yeah.
But they're moving back from, I think some of the new stores that they're doing are like 7,000 square feet. They're opening one in Midtown Manhattan. I think it's Midtown, but Manhattan. But it's a 7,000 square feet store in comparison to like, there used to be like 50,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a really good idea. I mean, the branding part makes me nervous, right? But I think it's a really good idea is to start getting back to like being more authentic and people oriented, Exactly.
And I mean, people talk about this in international marketing a lot, where it's super, super important. Like when you move your company from like, say, one country to another with that same brand, it's super important to have that local team that knows the culture and the environment. So if they sort of take it in that approach where like the things that need to stay consistent throughout, like across each location and everywhere across the country, but taking those little cultural nuances of like, hey, in Manhattan, it's known for like those 1800s, like old vintage bookstores. Like that's something that could appeal to people in this like new wave. So that management over there can like oversee that sort of little cultural niche, whereas like the values and everything else stays the same. I think that's super important.
That's a good point. And I think that's like, what's important to somebody in Manhattan is different to somebody who's in rural
Texas.
Rural Alabama, right? That kind of thing. Like, so how do you incorporate some of those you're talking about like country to country, but even in the U.S., those small cultural differences from state to state, from town to town, from city to city.
From neighborhood to neighborhood.
From neighborhood to neighborhood, right? Like, is it changing up? They used to have Starbucks in there, didn't they? I didn't notice
they did. They had like those smaller, like limited Starbucks where they just have like the drip coffee, no espresso machines or anything.
I'm not sure if they're still doing that, but it would be, something like that would be like a drink to that local that's really popular in that local area, that's where you would serve that, or you would put an emphasis on that.
Absolutely.
So,
and it's super important to mention the coffee shop thing because, you know, culture and like atmosphere and experience is such a big part of why people leave their house to go and get something. I mean, when you think about walking into a coffee shop, you're like smelling all of the coffee, you know, you're hearing the baristas chatting and the machines going on. You have like a good place to sit at, and it's like why you leave the house for that experience and the ambiance. And, you know, I think Barnes & Noble really has to consider that aspect as well, because, you know, to get people to leave their house to buy a book, you have to appeal to them more than just, oh, you can buy a book here. Because why would they leave their house to go buy a book when they can just do it from the comfort of their own home, like online on their phones? So they have to have like some sort of alternate appeal and like selling point as to why you should leave the house to buy a book at Barnes & Noble rather than staying inside and ordering it from home.
Yeah, another good point, right? Like how do those additional, you know, things that they can provide that, I mean, I think we've lost a lot of that like the neighborhood bookstore of that kind of cool spot to buy a book and sit down and have a coffee and just kind of relax on a Sunday morning kind of thing. That's kind of like even Starbucks is starting to do that. I like their, you know, their interior design. I think it's cool. It's modern. It's sleek, but it's lost that coziness. It has, you know what I mean?
That comfort and like that experience aspect. Yeah, absolutely.
People in Starbucks are more working rather than, hey, reading the paper. I mean, people don't really
relaxing. Yeah.
But it's the other thing that is in Barnes & Noble's favor is last year print sales went up like 8%. I think they say they've gone up every year since COVID. And then
which was like kind of unexpected for everybody, because everybody expected, oh, like COVID's happening, everyone's at home, we're all going to be reading ebooks. Like ebooks are the future. Everyone's going to be picking them up, and everyone's going to have like a Kindle or like a Barnes & Noble Nook, I believe is what it's called. So that was kind of like the expected trajectory of the market, but it turns out, no, like people still really, really love like the physical books. And I mean, myself included, I don't even own like an e-reader or anything of that sort, because I just love having like that physical book with me. So I think, it's super interesting that's happened, and they can really capitalize off of that.
Yeah, I think the statistic is publishers that still today that 75% of their revenue come from physical books and not ebooks. So that, I guess that I get it. Like the ebook is so convenient, right? Like you can have 60 books on a thing that's this big, right? But that tactile kind of turning the page and finishing that book, or
doesn't feel as good.
Or dog-earing like, you know, the page, you know, it's or the smell.
Being able to like use a bookmark, or like being able to like display it on a bookshelf, like that whole thing around books is like super important to a lot of people, including myself. So
I'm going to disagree with you on the bookshelf thing, because we have a bookshelf at home and it's just a bunch of books that nobody's ever read. If you have read it, I never read it again. Anyway.
Why buy books you don't read though?
I don't.
Like I personally, buy books that I always like am reading, and then I want to like display them on my shelf. You know?
Talk to my better half. She can speak to why we have books on a bookshelf that we've never read.
It's for the aesthetic.
It looks good. It makes me feel smart. I guess.
There you go.
But anyway, no, it's going to be interesting what Barnes & Noble does. I like the shift. I like getting away from that mean corporate bad guy image, giving some more autonomy to the local markets to bring in people. It's awesome.
And if they're actually able to compete with Amazon, that's going to be super, super big, because I mean, who can compete with Amazon? Who's been actually able to successfully do that so far? I don't know of anybody who's been able to do that. So if Barnes & Noble can pull this off, I think that's going to be super, super good for the market in general. So that we don't have like this whole monopoly in our hands.
Agreed. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited that they're moving the shift, because I think there's definitely a market for that. You know.
Absolutely, yes.
So
and it kind of brings us, brings us to like the internal thing that we're doing, because Barnes & Noble is more so doing like a makeover of their brand, I guess you could say, makeover in like their physical stores, what they're offering, basically everything. And it brings us to how we've recently been planning this makeover for our social media, which is a huge aspect of our brand here at Encite, because after undergoing like competitive analysis and the direction we want to go in, going back to that strategy element of like, what do we want to see for the future and how do we kind of get there? We've kind of pulled together to do a little refresh, a little makeover of our social media platforms, which is super exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's, you know, in the past, we've always kind of created, you know, artwork that was, you know, compelling and engaging and, you know, eye-catching, and we always wanted to get there. But I think it's super important for us to, you know, every so often we need to kind of review and revise and evolve and elevate. I think we've been using the word elevate.
Yes. Not so much that we're like completely doing a 180 and like doing something completely different, but more so of like, just like a revive, you know, of the original goal and image that we had in our heads.
And I think that the other thing is trying to be, again, we talked about this, is trying to be as efficient as possible at, you know, doing these kinds of things, making sure that we always talk about the 3 C's is consistency, congruency, and what's the other one?
I don't know. We always talk about the 3 C's, but we don't know the other.
But yeah, so the consistency there is making sure that our presentation is consistent, right? Like,
Absolutely.
and I think that that's what we do for a lot of times for our clients. But it's like the painter that doesn't paint their own house kind of thing. But now we're getting back to that, and it's super important for us to do that. And I know that, you know, our creative director and our creative team are gonna put together like a really cool, we're calling it a design system, like social media design system, to where imagery and video and all that kind of stuff is that consistency.
Yes, it's almost like doing like a brand standards, but like only on social media kind of thing.
Exactly, it is.
But so if you guys have checked out our social media lately, you've probably noticed a little bit of a change. Make sure to leave like your opinions or suggestions in the comments below as to how you feel about it. Yeah,
it's good. Is that it?
I think so.
Just today? All right.
That's today.
Well, hey, everybody, it's Adam, Nika, Encite Live. Dylan's behind the camera. We'll see you guys next time.
Bye.